Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first knowledge exchange session on the thematic area of energy management. This is a joint event of both Climate Smart Advisors Project and the Climate Forum Demo project. My name is Marleen and I'm from Belgium. And together with Klaus from Austria, we will host this first introductory session of energy management. What is on the agenda today? First, we will start with a short introduction, and then I will continue with our tool Farmers with Power that we use at Boerenbond projects in Belgium. Klaus will continue with giving explanation about the energy advice they are giving in the region of Steiermark in Austria. And we will end with a Q&A and a survey to see what, as I said, this is a first session. Hopefully there will be lots more, and we will ask for your input on the topics we will give a webinar on. There's a Q&A at the end of the session, as I said, but feel free to already ask some questions in the chat. I will not be able to see them while I'm presenting, but maybe Klaus can already help if possible, and vice versa, of course. So a short introduction to this energy management topic. We know all there are some targets that the EU has set for 2030 and also later on. But of course, reducing greenhouse gas emissions by a quite high percentage means that we also need higher shares of renewable energy, but also greater energy efficiency. And this is what this energy management topic is about. So we will do some activities over the next project years. Energy use in agriculture and forestry. Overall in the EU, the share of the total direct consumption of energy by agriculture and forestry is a bit more than 3%. But of course, we have some differences over the different countries. For example, the Netherlands, they have a high share of total direct consumption of energy by agriculture and forestry. But yeah, you all know they have lots of greenhouses, of course. But overall for the EU, it's a bit more than 3%. Within each sector in agriculture and forestry, there are also big differences. I already mentioned the greenhouses. They use a lot of energy, but you also have less energy-intensive sectors like growing vegetables or so. You know that there's a high potential of renewable energy production by agriculture and forestry, and you can see an illustration of that. It's the production of renewable energy in 2021, and that's also why the title of this presentation is Farmers with Power. There's a lot of potential. They have the power to produce a lot of renewable energy. They have the space, they have roofs, they have sometimes biomass, etc. So you can see, especially in Germany, France, big countries, of course, they produce a lot of renewable energy. And to start with a very simple one, but for a correct understanding, it's good that you know the difference between kilowatt and kilowatt hour. And so we use kilowatt is a unit for power. It's an instantaneous thing, power, for example, a light bulb, which has a power of 100 watts, or an oven. If you then multiply it by the time you use it, you go to kilowatt hours. So if this light bulb shines for 2 hours, then your energy consumption is 0.2 kilowatt hours or 200 watt hours. And the same applies for the oven, of course. We know that sometimes it's a bit confusing, but so power instantaneous, that's the level of your machine, your light bulb, and so on. But energy is really the use over time. Let me start with the tool Farmers with Power we use at Boerenbond projects in Belgium. First of all, who are we? Boerenbond is the professional organization of and for every farmer, horticulturist and landscape gardener in Flanders and East Belgium. East Belgium is that really tiny, small part at the east where they speak German, and Flanders is the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium. I said of and for every farmer, it's really a members organization, so really top-down. We have about 16,000 members at Boerenbond. This is about 70% of all farmers in Flanders and East Belgium. We have, as I said, it's a really bottom-up member organization. We have like 4,000 board members in 210 local groups in 5 provinces, and about 240 people are working at Boerenbond. What do we do? We promote agricultural and horticultural interests. We support our members through training and network activities. We stimulate innovations in agriculture and horticulture, very important topic. We create also social support for the sector, and we provide our members with quality advice. I am from the Boerenbond project team. What we specifically do, we give training, we organize network activities, and we give advice. And you can see this on the next slide. At Boerenbond project, we act as an innovation support service provider. So innovation is really high in our mission statement. We really want the sector to innovate, and therefore we inspire farmers. We also bridge the gap between farmers, researchers, but also other innovation partners like the technology supply sector, for example. We also give a lot of advice, and energy is one of the topics we give advice on, but we also try to train action-oriented. And that's why we decided some years ago to develop a very simple hands-on tool for energy management, and how to come to an energy-efficient farm in 6 steps. And this is a tool we use when we give a training. For example, as I said, we have 210 local organizations or local groups, my colleagues, and we often go in the evening to the different groups and we train them about energy. And maybe I should start with talking about my colleagues. I have 2 colleagues also working on energy. One is Laurens van der Lanote. The other one is Tom Schaken, and many of you know Tom probably because he's also highly involved in both projects, the Climate Farm Demo and Climate Smart Advisors. So we use this tool, very basic one. It's no rocket science, just a bit common sense of how you handle this topic of energy management. And when farmers come with a question or when we give training. First step is know your farm and how much energy is needed. More and more important, when is this energy needed? It sounds very obvious, but it's not, because often we go to a farm and farmers do not have a clue how much energy they use on a yearly basis, on a daily basis, per season. Sorry, someone is, thank you for muting your mic. Second step, how to optimize your energy bill. There are always optimizations when we go to a farm. Which energy saving measures can you apply to a farm? Really tailor-made. Third step, depending on the situation of the farm, what they already applied, implemented years before, and so on. Fourth step, of course, and they are all interested in which renewable energy technologies. Sorry, can you mute? Which renewable energy technologies suit your farm? Farmers are always interested in producing their own energy. We got a lot of questions. I think 90% of the questions is about producing a renewable energy technology. Fifth step, once you have implemented like solar panels or wind turbine, then it's about how to use this in a very efficient way, how to use it optimally. And then the sixth step is about energy cooperation. And the first 5 steps is then the farmer is an energy manager at his or her own farm, but for the 6th step, he or she becomes an energy entrepreneur, as we say it like that. I will quickly go through the 6th step to explain a bit more about them. So the first step, know your farm, I already said. This is really about giving insight into the consumption profile of the farm. And you can see some illustrations. On the right, you can see sometimes we need to really measure. If people think, okay, we think we have a high consumption and we do not understand why, and so on. But the consumption profile, and you can see some examples, are really important. You can also see some differences. For example, I put on two illustrations, two from dairy farms. The first on the left is from a more traditional dairy farm where they milk twice daily. On the right is a dairy farm where they do robot milking. Yeah, you can see really different consumption profile when you look at the electricity use of that farm. You have in a dairy farm where they milk twice a day, you see the peaks. Those are illustrations for a few days, and you see really the peak in the morning, and you see the peak in the evening when the farmer is milking the cows. On the right, robot milking. You all know cows can go to the robots throughout the day, so it's more like a flat consumption profile, which has also its benefits, especially when you want to install solar panels. Imagine when you milk twice a day. Yeah, when you have your solar peak at noon and you milk in the morning, you milk in the evening, you see profiles are not completely matching. So this is what we do when we go to a farm, and first we map the situation of the energy use at the farm. And here are only electricity examples, but we also do the same, of course, with heat. Yeah, and then we do not only map the total energy consumption, but we also look more in depth. Okay, what is energy needed for? Again, an example of a dairy farm. A lot of energy goes to the production of hot water. They need hot water to clean the machines, the milking machine, but also the milk tank. So they need really a lot. They need a lot of hot water, really hot water. But also the cooling of the milk in the milk tank, of course, the milking process itself, a bit of lighting, and then other processes. And that's what we always want to do. We want to map it and also to see, okay, where do we need to put our efforts in? As you can see, lighting in an average dairy farm is not that important. So maybe we first have to look at the production of hot water and the cooling. Okay, what can be optimized? And sometimes we also work, we also benchmark. We have average KPIs for different subsectors in agriculture, and so we can compare a bit the different farms we go to. Second step, energy bill, how to optimize this. In a typical energy bill in Flanders consists of three blocks. We have first the consumption cost. What is the energy, or how much energy is needed by the farm, and this is in megawatt hours or kilowatt hours is the units. Second one, the distribution cost. It's in Flanders about consumption, but also about peak capacity. And remember that I was talking about the robot milking versus the twice a day milking. When you ask more peak capacity, you have to pay more. And then, of course, there are also the taxes. We give advice on electricity contracts. Together with the farmer, we discuss what is best, a fixed contract, a variable contract, or maybe even a dynamic contract. It's not always easy because we cannot see in the future, but we try to give them advice as good as possible. We also give advice about this peak capacity and how to lower the need for a certain level of power. We can do this via batteries, but also by shifting some energy demands, and I will talk about this a bit later. We also give advice on low voltage, medium voltage. Do you have to buy an electricity? We call it a cabin, but I'm not sure if it's the correct word in English. But we also give them advice on what is needed or what is the best for their farm. So energy bill is also an important one. Yeah, and then energy savings should also always be the first step. I said previously, a lot of farmers want to install solar panels, wind turbine, etc. But we always say, okay, but first try to see if you can lower your energy demands by saving some energy. And I just put in here a slide for illustration. Because about energy savings alone, I think we can fill like 20 webinars without any problem. This is just an example again of a dairy farm where you can see, but it's in Dutch. You can see the different the different ways of energy saving at the farm in the stable, the heating, the cooling, etc. But energy saving, we always emphasize, or that this is really a very important first step. And then we go to energy production, and I was talking previously about the energy consumption profiles, but when you want to implement some windmills or solar panels, the floating solar panels or whatever, it always comes down to have a look at the production profiles to see how it matches. And this is an example of a solar panel with a power level of 35 kilowatts peak. And this is from January until December. And it's not rocket science. In summer, there is more production, of course, than there is in winter. But this has big implications, of course, when we look, for instance, at a fruit farm, typical fruit farm, where you have a lot of consumption in end of August and September when fruits have been picked, and you have to cool them down in the storage installation. Then you need a lot of electricity. But when it's April, May, June, your cooling cells are getting more and more empty. You do not need a lot of energy anymore. But at that time, the solar panels are giving a lot of production. So not always that easy. So this is a typical example of a solar panel production profile. And now we have a production profile of a wind turbine, not a typical maybe, but a wind turbine. And you see it's completely different compared to solar panels. So that's how we try to work and see what fits best for the specific farm. Flexibility, as I said, okay, sometimes the production profiles do not match the consumption profiles, and then sometimes you need to be flexible in the way you use it. And this is a cartoon in Dutch, but I don't think it needs much translation. But the man says, damn, no wind, and just when I was about to cut the grass. So, of course, this is luckily not a real situation, but you know what I mean. Sometimes it's best if you have a wind turbine of solar panels to use some energy at the farm. So what is the goal to the maximum use of self-generated energy? And we can do this by shifting energy users, and that's what sometimes happens in earlier days before dairy farmers. Again, this example had solar panels. They traditionally in Flanders produced their hot water during the night because that was the cheapest energy at that time. But now when they have more and more solar panels, they sometimes shift the production of this hot water to the day, to noon time, when they can use directly this solar energy production. But also buffering excess of energy, especially the heat, then is also an option. And then really interesting, getting more and more interesting, is storing energy in batteries or charging applications. All these measures will increase the own consumption, but a side effect, they will also help in peak shaving, and so lower this peak capacity. Yeah, and if we look a bit broader, not only at the farm, but also the farmer as an entrepreneur, energy in batteries can also use to participate in the reserve and imbalance of your region. And it's also a new business model for farmers. Yeah, energy cooperation is actually the last step. Sometimes you produce lots more energy than you need at your farm, and then we try to look together with the farmer on how to make a business model of it, or beforehand when they have the idea of installing, for example, agrivoltaic system or a big wind turbine, people can already think about how to make a business model out of this energy production. And I will illustrate this very shortly with a nice example from the north of Belgium at the border with the Netherlands. This is Halnet. Their slogan is Halnet powered by boer en burger, and boer means farmer and burger is a citizen. So these are the farmers of Halnet, and Halnet is a really nice, a really small municipality in the north, as I said. They're at the end of electricity, a line, and they said, okay, to make sure that we have enough energy and that we have cheap energy, and those two things are really high on the mission of the European energy as well. Have clean and affordable, but also available energy. They said, okay, let's work together, and they formed a group of about 30, 40 people together, farmers together with citizens, and they had decided to work together. And so they have all invested in the energy cooperation, and they have installed solar panels on different farms, taking into account the different consumption profiles and the different production profiles. And now they are really enthusiastic. They see that they can make a business model out of it. Now they are already thinking for next steps. Sharing energy, energy communities, energy corporations are really encouraged by the European Union. Since a few years, there are some directives supporting these systems, and it's just slowly coming up in our region, but I know from some other countries, and I think especially in Austria and Germany, they also already have a long tradition of having energy corporations when it comes to heating villages and farms using biomass. I would like to conclude with this. Please do not hesitate to put your questions in the chat. I will now give the floor to Klaus, and he will continue on their energy advising in Austria. Thank you.
Thank you, Marlene, for your first input. I saw there was no direct question in the chat, but there was one remark that, for example, lighting is very small in energy consumption, but it may have a significant increase in production when using the right wavelength of LED. So, and I think that's a really important thing, especially talking about energy management in agriculture, that we also always have this dependencies between energy and the production of agriculture and
that's
food.
True.
Especially if you look at your background photo, agrivoltaics is a perfect example for that.
Absolutely.
Where we see this.
But this is absolutely true. This is absolutely true. But as a starter, sometimes we when we give advice on energy, we sometimes consider their energy demand as a kind of black box. So at first we give advice on energy, but indeed, when it also comes to growing fruit or vegetables, or maybe even the way cows are happy, can be influenced, of course, by the light. That's true. Maybe a topic for a next webinar.
There was also a question about what about biogas production?
Yeah.
Is this a topic in Flanders?
It is a topic in Flanders, but only small scale ones, actually. So we have a lot of small scale biogas installation, and it's with the manure of dairy farms. And there is quite some opposition against really big installations. We are living in a really highly populated, high density, how to say it, country. Lots of people and not so much area. So it's a bit complicated, but we do have a lot of small scale digesters with manure of dairy farms. But as I said, we are from the energy management thematic area. I forgot to tell there are 11 others, and biogas is one of them. So biogas is a separate thematic area.
There was also a question about costs of different types of energy production, like solar, wind. How do they compare to each other?
That's a complicated question. When we give advice to farmer, of course, the cost price is a very important one, but not the only factor when we give advice. It has also to do with how easy it is to implement or to use a specific production type. Solar, that's a very easy one. I mean, it doesn't require permits, at least not when you install them on your roof. For wind, it's much more complicated. And not talking even about biogas installations or in Flanders installing wood burners. It's also very complicated. But regarding the costs, yeah, that really depends. But wind turbines are really expensive, yeah. But it's complicated also because there are also subsidies we can give. But I think it's a good suggestion for a webinar that is really dedicated to this question. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
I think now it's my part to take over and discuss with you a bit the energy management situation in Austria, in the region of Styria, where I'm from and where we are active. My name is Klaus. I'm the thematic lead for energy management in the Climate Smart Advisors project, and I'm working in the Chamber of Agriculture and Forestry in Styria. Styria, you can see it here in the picture on the top, is the region, like in the middle or south in the middle of Austria. It's an area with 1.2 million people, and as you can see, we have quite a lot of forest areas, like more than 60% of our whole area are forests. So forestry is a very important part of our agriculture and of course also of our energy production system in agriculture. You can see also the numbers of farms we have in Styria. The numbers are declining. However, we still have 33,600 farms, quite a high number for, on comparison, quite small area. You see the scale of our agriculture is quite small scale. We have like 12,000 full-time farms, and the most of the farms are part-time farms, so they have a other job, and farming is maybe their second income for farming. We also have quite a significant number of organic farms. It's also one reason I think it's also that we are quite small scaled, and we also, because we are so small scaled, we have to think creatively to get additional income. One option can be organic farming. One option can be direct selling to end customers. And the third option is generating additional income via energy. And in Styria or in Austria, it's quite a long tradition to make energy consultancy, energy advisory as a Chamber of Agriculture. Maybe some words to the Chamber of Agriculture in Styria. In Austria, it's organized in a way that every farmer has to be a member at our organization by law. So every of these 33,000 agricultural farms are our members. We are also a members organization. We do advisory in every aspect of agriculture and forestry. And we are also a lobbying organization. So we represent the interests of those farmers on policy level. So those are the two main areas we are engaged in. We have in total a bit more than 400 employees for the region of Styria. And yeah, so now I want to move on to the topic of energy, maybe show you a bit how we do it in Styria, what is our approach, what is our history on energy in agriculture and advisory. Yeah, in our company, energy consulting and advisory has quite a long tradition. The Chamber of Agriculture was for sure a pioneer in the energy consulting topic. We have a department for energy since 1978. So yeah, nearly 50 years. We are consulting farmers on the topic of energy. And on the right, it's in German, but it's a newspaper article of a former colleague of mine from 1978. And it's really interesting to read it today because it's if you read it, it's up to date more or less. It's the same topics, except of really small things, but the topics in general are the same. And already in 1978, they talked about or they consulted about direct usage of solar power. They had bioenergy in their several applications like wooden bioenergy, like straw, using the manure for energy, using energy crops, and also utilizing heat pumps. And what was also very, very interesting and important is that they already saw 50 years ago that above of that energy efficiency measures are the most important ones. So that we have to use thermal insulation, that we should work on heat recovery systems and efficiency systems in the whole process. And that's very interesting to see. So that were the roots of energy advisory in Styria. Of course, with the main focus lying on the utilization of biomass for energy, and also with the idea of generating additional income for the farms by selling this biomass to other people, to other companies. And there was a saying like that every farmer should become also an energy farmer and generate additional income out of it. What are we doing today? Today we are a team of 10 people in the consultancy of biomass in the Chamber of Agriculture in Styria. We cover the topics, of course, of biomass, like everything about biomass resources and logistic systems, heating systems, but also district heating and biomass CHP, so combined heat and power plants, also part of our consultancy, as well as biogas plants. Those were the roots of our department, and over the time, more and more photovoltaics and battery storages, e-mobility, energy communities, every kind of efficiency actions broadened our field of consultancy. But our roots are from the biomass, and therefore I want to make a small excursus to the topic of, or the story of biomass in Styria. Here you can see a map of Austria. It's called an Austrian bioenergy map. You see every single dot on this map represents either a biomass district heating plant or a biomass CHP plant or a biogas plant or some producer of wooden pellets. So there's quite a lot of action going on. And we're seeing here in Styria we have the highest density on, for example, biomass district heating plants. We have nearly 700 biomass district heating plants in Styria and 2,500 all over Austria. And that's the highest density of such district heating plants in the whole world. And most of those district heating plants originated from farmers' corporations. So they're still operated, quite a lot of them operated by farmers. So the idea was that they didn't got a lot of money for waste wood they couldn't sell for the sawmills. Their only customer on the early days were the pulp and paper industry, but they decreased the prices, so it wasn't feasible anymore to use those woods, and the farmers had the idea to work together in a corporation and build small to medium scale district heating plants and produce the heat for the village. So they're like 1, 2 to 10, up to 10 farmers together building a district heating plant and supplying villages or smaller to medium cities with heat out of biomass. Here you can also see the development of the renewable share in Austria. The green line on top is the total share of renewables. We are at the moment we have about 34% of our gross domestic energy consumption, which we can cover with renewables. What's really interesting is the comparison with the red line below. The red line shows the share of renewables if we exclude the biomass. So the red line represents solar, wind, hydropower, and you can see the difference is the biomass itself. So biomass is by far the most important renewable energy source we have in Austria. You can also see the development over the last years were mainly done with biomass. And you might think, of course, you have that much forest, that's an Austrian phenomenon, but that's not true. It's biomass, you can see it all over the world and all over the European Union, is by far the most important renewable energy source we have. And yeah, we will still need it for the future for an energy transition to renewable European Union until 2050, which is the goal by the Commission. Yeah, by utilizing biomass for energy, we already face a discussion of how sustainable is this, and is it really sustainable? And here's just some numbers on forest area, wood stock, and biomass or wood use, yearly harvest of wood in Austria. In this white boxes, you see the annual harvest of wood in Austria. you can see over the last decades, it nearly has doubled from 13, 14 million solid cubic meters of wood. We nearly doubled to 26 solid cubic meters of wood annual harvest. By this time, although we doubled the harvesting, we really could expand, or the stock of wood in our forests really had a big growth. That's the black line here, from 780 million solid cubic meters to over 1.2 billion solid cubic meters. So our forests are growing, not just in Austria, but also in the whole European Union. And we still have plenty of potential to use forests. And by using forests, of course, you will use it in the first place for going to the sawmill and producing, some furniture or houses out of the wood. But there are quite a lot of byproducts in forestry. So this line represents how many, if I harvest 100 cubic meters of wood, how many cubic meters are available for energy. If I have it just directly in the forest, it's just 10 to 15%, which are going directly for energy production. But if I go down the process line, you can see that nearly 60% of the wood harvested is available for energetic use in quite a small time of period. And over long term, if we have like wooden buildings and they will be deconstructed, let's say in 100 years over long term, also this wood will be earlier, sooner or later, be available for energy utilization. Yeah, we are talking about energy management. We're talking about energy management. Therefore, it's also important to know what are the emissions in agriculture and forestry. Those are the emissions for Austria. And you can see energy management mainly focuses here on the above part, on the CO2 emissions from the machinery and so on. For agriculture, that's just a smaller part of our emissions. You know, we have methane, we have nitrous oxide from other agricultural parts, but in energy management, we mainly focus on the CO2, reducing the CO2 in our energy consumption. So what are we doing in terms of if we are on a farm in Styria and we make some consultancy, what are the areas we are looking on a farm level? We have, of course, the topic of their own power supply. We look, for example, here on the ventilation systems, on the lighting systems. Of course, the heat demand is very important. Fuel consumption, cooling, e-mobility, heating optimizations, thermal sanitations, the overall power demand, so the efficiency actions, and energy management at all. So there are plenty of areas we can look at. And in each area, for sure, there are options or possibilities for improvement. So what is our key points of advisory work? I don't go into detail too much of our process of advisory, as it's quite similar to those in Belgium with the steps Marlene already presented. This is a graph we are using for our presentations, which shows our approach. We mainly focus on the 4 areas shown in the middle, like with the first step, of course, the energy efficiency, as Marlene also said, it's important to reduce energy consumption first. That makes it easier to achieve success in the other areas of energy generation, energy storage, and energy management. And those steps are always done with the goal of the outer part of the ring of the graphic to lower the cost of the farm, to reduce the dependencies, as we saw it like on the energy crisis with the Ukraine war, where prices really skyrocketed for energy, with the goal to increase the level of self-sufficiency of the farms, and for sure to reduce the consumption at all. So that's our approach. One more thing I want to show you is a quite new funding program we have in Austria. Why I show you a funding program is because I think it's quite successful and a good idea. It's called a funding program for energy self-sufficiency farms. We have since 1.5 years. And one special thing is here that this funding program funds also comprehensive energy audits for farms. In the past, without this program, we mainly did consultancy and advisory on single actions. So the farmer had an idea on optimizing his heating system, or he had an idea on generating energy with photovoltaics. And we did, of course, consultancy on that. But they really rarely came to us and say, come on, let's look at my farm at the whole. So let's make a comprehensive audit. And with this subsidy program, we really can focus also on those comprehensive audits. That's really important to really look at the whole system. And this funding program doesn't only support the audits, but it's also coupled, it funds also the actions afterwards. So it funds actions in energy efficiency, it funds in the production of renewable energy production and energy storage, in e-mobility and in energy management as well. And especially like in the efficiency management, the funding amount depends on the kilowatt hours or megawatt hours, which we can reduce by the certain action really focused on the action done on farm level. So this audit and the optimization actions go hand in hand. And this can be quite comprehensive on a farm level, but it can be also quite simple. And I just brought to you one example of a dairy farm I was recently. So that's not a best practice example. It's just, I would say, a typical example which comes to us quite often. A small scale dairy farm with like 20 cows, 22 hectares of grassland, some alpine meadow land, and 50 hectares of forestry. That's really typical. You can also see that we don't have like really, most of Styrian farms are mixed farms. So they have forestry, they have grassland, they have maybe some animal breeding or crop farming. But we mostly have several parts of agriculture. And here on this certain, this specific farm, you can see we, in the first step, look at what are the heat demands and the energy demands in the total in electricity, heat, and fuel. Look what is the own consumption at status quo and what are the costs on energy the farm has. Afterwards, this specific one replaced his heating system, replaced heating pumps, did some new photovoltaic and battery storage, and also replaced some fossil chainsaws by electric chainsaws. The result was a decrease of total energy consumption, increased own production in the field of electricity, and slightly increased degree of energy self-sufficiency. And for sure, also that's the most important thing for the farmers, I think in the most cases, is the reduction of the energy bills. This farmer could reduce his annual cost from nearly 20,000 euros to 16,600 euros per year as energy costs. Another example I want to show you is also, Marlene showed you, it showed some similar load profile of a dairy farm. You can see a conventional dairy farm without milking robot. So conventional milking in the morning and evening, especially important if you look on the installation of photovoltaics or battery storages. Here the line you can see what we could cover with a 5 kilowatt peak photovoltaic. And you can see we have, of course, in this case, the peaks of milking, which we can't cover without the storage. So battery storages are quite important, and quite a lot of farmers are installing battery storages recently. And we also doing projects on together also with our regional energy supplier about storage systems. So we did projects on different storage systems. We tried, for example, like classic lithium-ion storages, but also saltwater storages. We tried to try hydrogen, but we had some technical troubles there. Also ice water storages. So we did projects on storage systems. And here you can see a graph on, it's about photovoltaics and battery storages for a dairy farm with 30,000 kilowatt hours electricity consumption. And the idea is how big a photovoltaic has to be, for example, 50% self-sufficient, or how big does my storage system has to be 50% self-sufficient. And here, for example, if I
yeah, I'm just on a call. I'll come out in a tick.
All right.
Cheers. Bye.
Can you maybe mute yourself? Thank you. In this case, for example, you can reach with 32 kilowatt peak and a 32 kilowatt hour storage self-sufficiency of 50%. But you could also reach those 50% by installing like 45 kilowatt peak photovoltaics with a 22 kilowatt peak storage system. So alongside this green line, every ratio of photovoltaics power to storage power would reach 50% self-sufficiency. And you can also see how higher I want to go up with self-sufficiency, the harder it gets. And somewhere in the area of 80%, 90% self-sufficiency, it really nearly gets important, or at least it's not economically feasible to make such big photovoltaic systems on the roof. So the goal isn't to be 100% self-sufficient, but to decrease dependency and increase self-sufficiency grades up to 50, 60, 70% maybe on a farm level. I also want to talk a couple words to what we are also doing is the part of public relations, not just advisory work, but also the public relation work is very important. We are producing quite often videos about, let's say, best practice farms. We're writing newspaper articles about those farms. We're making some professional photographs, and that's really also an important part of our daily work. And also the generation of information material. So we are producing quite a lot of brochures about energy management in agriculture in different topics, like from energy from wood, like emergency power supply, photovoltaics, battery storages, alternative fuel systems, smart meter, energy management. So we really have a lot of those information material for our farmers, which we're also producing in our team. Yes, so I'm at the end of my short introduction of what is our approach in Austria and Styria on energy management, on energy advisory, and what's a bit maybe the history, especially in the terms of usage of biomass. And as Marlene already said at the beginning, it's the first of our webinars on energy management. I think that the next webinars over the next couple of years within the two projects, Climate Farm Demo and Climate Smart Advisors, the goal should be to go more into depth on certain topics of energy management. And yeah, I think I will hand over again to Marlene, and we can maybe, I don't know if there were some questions first before we go into the Q&A session.
There were indeed some questions during your talk. Thank you, Klaus. First came from Richard Lloyd. In terms of carbon footprint, how do you reduce the CO2 output of small biomass plants?
Yeah, that could be a webinar on its own. You know, that's a long-term discussion, especially on European level, but especially as the countries with a lot of forests, and Austria is one of those. We are convinced that biomass usage in a sustainable way, as we are doing it in Austria, and I'm sure in the most parts of Europe is done in a sustainable way. Biomass is per se a renewable source with a carbon neutral footprint. Of course, we have some minimal footprints, like for harvesting, for the machinery to bring the wood out. It's really in the small percent numbers, and it doesn't even compare to fossil fuels at all. But this topic could be a webinar on its own. Sustainability of biomass and the usage.
Ian from England also gave a short response to this question about practical efficiencies that can be implemented. And you can see his answer, small improvements, of course, in the combustion process.
Yeah, of course, that's the other part, the combustion process, and increasing the efficiency of the combustions with the goal to, and we already see it, the efficiency is increasing, the also the heat demand is decreasing for households. So we expect that we can supply like double the square meter of housing areas by the same amount of biomass in future, just because of increasing efficiencies. And also climate change at its own is doing this thing, like 1 degree more during the heating period means 6% less energy input.
Yeah.
So
there was also a question of Beatrice about what kind of battery do you talk about, physics or virtuals?
Physics. We have really physics, yeah. Lithium-ion, salt water, ice water storages.
Yeah.
There are some projects with mainly fostered by the energy providers, those kind of virtual storages, which is more or less a mass example for the energy suppliers more than a real storage system. What is becoming more topic is, especially when we're talking about energy communities, like regulated in the European legislation, especially the energy communities for electricity, that we build community batteries. So one big battery for the community, and
same in Belgium. Yeah, absolutely same in Belgium. Instead of having all small batteries, is aggregating these things. There's also a question, and I think it's an interesting one, and I think it's a question for everyone. Are your brochures accessible and readable online?
Yes, they are. However, they are in German.
Yeah, so and I would like to add to that. Because there, you probably all know there's a EU Farm Book project that is running also for 7 years, and it also started 2 years ago. The goal of this EU Farm Book is that all European projects upload their content, their practical content. I think the brochures that Klaus presented are really practical ones for farmers, advisors, and so on, that they will upload them on this EU Farm Book eventually, and that they can be available, accessible for everyone, but also that they will be translated. That's what I heard from the EU Farm Book project, that at least in English, but also in some other languages. And I think that's a nice thing, and we all produce a lot of useful knowledge, and this way we can share it amongst everyone, and that it's accessible for everyone. And thank you, Klaus, for putting the link into the chats. Yeah, we have some time for more questions, so either you raise your hands and put on your mic, or you use a chat function. That's up to you what you want. There's another question. Are the investment in solar energy and storage commercial, profitable, or are they supported with subsidies? I can answer for Flanders at least. We do not give subsidies for solar energy anymore, and only a very small amount for battery storage. So solar subsidies have already stopped in 2012, so already 12 years ago, because they say it's profitable in their own. Or by their own. Yeah, I don't know the situation in Austria, Klaus.
In Austria, it's profitable on its own, especially solar energy without storage. With storage, it's close to be profitable without subsidies. However, we still have subsidies for photovoltaics and storage. On the photovoltaics, like for normal private households, it's free of the VAT tax, so no tax on buying photovoltaic systems. And like on agriculture, we have subsidies between let's say 100 to 180, 190 euros per kilowatt peak. And storage systems are funded with 200 euro per kilowatt hour storage capacity.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with subsidies, also the storage is profitable.
Yeah. But again, especially storage really depends on the type of farm you have and on your energy demand. And Klaus already focused on that. I also did. In order to have a very efficient and maybe profitable system, lower your energy demand first. And yeah, and as I said, it depends on your demand profile. Batteries are only profitable if you use the battery enough times, to say so.
Yeah,
yeah, and
that's the tricky part on batteries. We see on the low profiles that we use it quite often in spring and summer. However, during winter times when photovoltaic production is low in general, the battery isn't used at all on some low profiles. So
yeah, the same for fruit farms, for example. Their batteries are less profitable for dairy farms, and Klaus also presented this example with a nice the 2 peaks, one in the morning, one in the evening, and then the solar production peak at noon. Those types of farms, when you install a battery there, it's more profitable. But again, it's sometimes difficult to give one answer because one size doesn't fit all. Are there PDF versions in English, Klaus?
No, sorry, just in German at this moment.
You'll have to wait for the EU farm book, yeah.
Yeah, but maybe AI is quite good at this time, so maybe AI can translate it quite fast.
Okay. You can still put your questions in the chat or raise your hand, of course, but I will go through to the survey. So as we said earlier, this is the first of a series of webinars. So we really want your input now. Which topics do you consider relevant for your region or sector? Can be a specific technique, can be a specific energy source, maybe about advice tools. Please be quite specific, maybe also mention your region or your organization, but go to menti.com, scan the QR code or put in the number 13936965, and you can add some suggestions for next webinars. And we really appreciate your input, and we're glad to use this. We will give you some time for that. In the meantime, I will open this Menti, and I see that people are getting in, which is really nice.